is up, my britches? If you are new here, hello, my name is Brittany. In today's video, I really hope you guys appreciate that very subpar quality thumbnail, but we'll get into it eventually because we're going to be ranking all of the 2020 palettes that I currently have in my collection. I have over 50. Some of them I've not used yet, so I'm going to address those ones first, but I have 55 that I've used, have my thoughts on. I'm overwhelmed just sitting here with all of these palettes. I'm not gonna lie, it's very overwhelming. I'm well aware this is excessive. This is something that I love to do on YouTube, is just sit and talk about makeup, try out new products. So that's where this year, 2020 was the year of palettes for me. I've never purchased or owned this many palettes in my entire life, but I had so much fun playing with palettes, playing with color, all of the things, palettes this year. And I feel like it's going to probably continue into 2021. There are some that I have purchased throughout the year that I no longer own. We're just going to talk about everything that's currently in my collection. And then before we get into it, I do want to let you guys know too, this video, I forgot to mention this in my ranking my neutral palettes. I ranked all of my neutral palettes in my collection, I think about a week or so ago. I forgot to mention that these types of videos were inspired from Kelsey Brianna J. Kelsey Brianna J was one of the first people that I had ever seen do these ranking style videos. So I'm like 99% sure she was the very first person to do these. So I left her channel linked down below. Go check out Kelsey's channel. She's beautiful. I love watching her channel. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that today because I'm like, son of a bitch, how did I forget to mention that in my last one? So go check out Kelsey's channel. She's a doll. I've been following her for so many years now. Oh my gosh. I think it's been like 3-4 years I've been following her. It's been a journey, but go check out Kelsey and let's dive into. First, I'm going to start with, while everybody's kind of coming in, I see you guys all coming to the live chat. Everybody that's in here has probably already seen my IG story. Guys, we're going to get there. We are going to get there. But let me start first with the palettes that I have not tried yet. And please let me know too, guys, how does everything sound? Because in my last video, I was having some sound issues. Let me know on that. Kelly, thank you for the compliments on my hair. Okay, let's jump in. These are going to be all the palettes that I have, but I have not tried yet, whether they were sent to me. I'll give you guys all the details as we're going through it. So the first one that I have is the Kaleidos, the Futurism No. 3 Astro Pink palette. I probably won't swatch any of these, but I do want to pull the palettes out so you guys can at least see what they look like. I love the packaging on this. I do plan on doing a dedicated video to Kaleidos again. I did the Shasimi City and the Lunar Lavender. I'm pretty sure I did that last month or the month before. I've mentioned this brand before on my channel, but this palette was sent to me. And then I also have the Escape Pod, also from Kaleidos. I'm so excited to try these, but I'm like, okay, let me kick off 2021 with trying more Kaleidos palettes. So the only two that I have tried are the ones that I mentioned earlier. Look at this palette though. I was so excited when they gave me the option of the palette that they wanted to, that I requested them send to me. The first one, I'm like, bitch, I need this palette. It looks so pretty. The packaging on Kaleidos too, or Kaleidos, I'm not really sure how to exactly say it. The packaging is so high quality with their brand, so I'm so excited to try these ones. So I didn't rank them because I have not tried them yet. I also was sent a package of Charlotte Tilbury. So I have the Charlotte Tilbury, the Pillow Talk Instant Eye Palette. I have not touched this, but I cannot wait. When I got this package from a subscriber, I was so excited, but I really still want the holiday one too. But look it. This is just basic. It's so fucking basic, but I still can't wait to use it. It looks so pretty. I have been such a Charlotte Tilbury bitch this year. I also have the Pillow Talk. This is the Luxury Palette. Haven't touched this one yet. And then I also have the Luxury Palette of Pops in the shade Pillow Talk. So this looks like all of pretty much shimmery metallic sort of vibe. I cannot wait to dig my fingers into these, but I'm trying to hold off. I wanted to test out just the palettes that I had already, had on deck. And I'm very focused primarily on new products on my channel. Some people may not love that. Occasionally I'll throw in older products here and there, but I really like to focus on new stuff because I'm nosy. I want to know if it's good. So these ones, when they were sent to me, they weren't necessarily new. And then I was also sent the Chanello. This is the Lace for Hombres, I believe is the name of it. The Multi-Effect Quadra Eyeshadow in the shade, I think it's $3.56. I'm going to butcher that, but I'm going to show you guys. Oh, let's see. Steven says, if you have that one, you don't really need the holiday, in my opinion. See, I really liked the holiday one last year because it had the green tones in it. I'm at the point with Charlotte Tilbury, I would just want to own it all. That's where I'm at. I love Charlotte Tilbury products. So I'll show you guys what this... Oh, I'm like opening it backwards. It's got a little push button, Brittany. Oh, and I just dropped one of the little applicators. But I have swatched this. I swatched it in, I think, a haul video. When I did this whole haul from one of my subscribers, I was so, like, so just humbled and honored. And just, it was so nice to receive such a wonderful gift from somebody. It's just, I will cherish this for the rest of my life. And it was, like, my very first Chanel anything. So I haven't tried it yet, but it's just one of those things I'm like, it looks so pretty that I don't want to touch it, you know? We talked about that in, was it my last video? Yeah, it was my last Will I Buy It? I'm like, it's just one of those things I want to have it, but I don't want to touch it because it looks so pretty. This next one, this was actually sent to me from Karen Harris. This is the Profusion, the Emeralds 10 Shade Eyeshadow Palette. These are sold usually at Walmart, I'm pretty sure, but I can never find Profusion in any of my stores. But I know Karen Harris, you guys know her. Karen Harris and Heather Austin are always talking about how much they love the Profusion formula. And then, was it my birthday? I'm pretty sure it was my birthday Karen sent this to me. I'm pretty sure. Karen, if you're here, I still haven't used this yet, but it's still hanging out in my collection. I love the fact that it's greens. I'm a sucker for green eyeshadows, so I wanted to mention that one. I also have the Sydney Grace Enduring Love palette. I keep saying, I'm like, okay, I really need to get my shit together and use this palette because it looks so pretty. It's just, I'm so overwhelmed with palettes. But we'll talk about another palette from Sydney Grace a little bit later. And then I also have the Nabla Side by Side. Like, are you guys keeping track of how many palettes that I have that I haven't tried yet? I'm kind of embarrassed for myself. This I ranked in the middle of my, what was it, ranking my neutral palettes, because I was like, I love the fact that you got the warm tones, the cool tones, the neutrals. You have the variations in formula with this one. And I'm like, you know what? I gotta set it aside for right now because I still haven't tried it, but I think it's a great color story, and I've been really impressed with Nabla this year, so still have yet to try it. Maybe in 2021, maybe we'll get there. And then I also have the Give Me Glow Cosmetics Vintage Rose Palette. This one I have not tried yet, but I do have other ones from Give Me Glow that I have tried, so I'll feature those today. This was so much prettier in person. Just look at it. It kind of gives me, like, the Pat McGrath Divine Rose vibes, but just on a deeper scale, I think. I don't have that palette, so I'm totally assuming, but when I see this, I'm like, oh, it definitely gives me, like, Pat McGrath vibes. So if you have both of these, please let me know your feedback on that. So this one, I'm like, this is, I think, the only palette from Give Me Glow that I purchased that I haven't used yet. And then we still have, guys, the ColourPop Hocus Pocus. By the time I actually got this, nobody gave a shit anymore. And I don't think it's restocked ever since. I could be wrong there, but I still have not touched it. This was one that I'm like, I don't care if it's trash. I just wanted to own it because I love Hocus Pocus. I'm a big Disney lover. I feel like all you guys probably know that by now. But this one I'm like, still have yet to try. Still have yet to use it. I honestly won't be that heartbroken if I never get around to it, but Karen, you are a bad influence. Like this collection is strongly influenced by Karen Harris for sure, because she's an eyeshadow palette queen. I'm trying, listen, Karen, I'm going to shame you real quick. I'm trying to get Karen to rank her eyeshadow palettes of 2020, and she's not giving it to me, and I'm not having it. She's like, Brittany, I can't. There's too many. Guys, shame Karen into doing it. She's gonna kill me. Okay, let's move on. I just picked up all of the rest of the BH Cosmetics, the Sweet Shop palette. So I already had the pistachio, which you'll see that rank today, but I picked up, oh my god, I'm not gonna open these because I haven't even touched these yet, but the Sweet Shop Bubblegum, Cherry on Top, as soon as they came back in stock, I'm like, I need them all. I just want them all. There's Orange Sorbet, Cotton Candy, and Sugar Cone. Need I say more? I feel like everybody's losing their shit about these products, and I'm here for it. I do plan on doing a, like, ranking those palettes in the future, so make sure you guys subscribe. If you guys want to see that, let me know. It was an idea that I had in my head, so I'll probably do that after I put them all to use and all that sort of stuff. So those are all the palettes I have and I haven't even touched yet. I feel shameful of myself for that. Would you guys watch a 2-part video? Karen, I'll watch any video that you post, period, but especially for eyeshadow palettes. I'm here for it. Okay, now, if you guys haven't yet, I see there's 107 people watching and 50 thumbs ups. I'm going to need everybody to come through. I want to see if you guys can guess these with me. So, I'm going to start with 55. And if you have not yet, thumbs up this video or thumbs it down if you don't like it. Why the fuck you watching? I'm just wondering. Okay, let's start with 55. I even have Post-its. I was prepared today. I was going to do this video yesterday and I'm like, this is so hard. So the first palette that I have is from Il Makiage. This is the Il Makiage Rico Nasty. This is the more colorful palette because there was 2 palettes that launched with this collection. And I'm going to kind of walk you guys through why I rank things where I did. So this palette is the Neon Rage palette. First of all, this packaging is 10 out of 10. Love the packaging. I rank this last because this gives no pigmentation, like, at all. They look so intense and so blinding, but it's like, it's such a dense formula that you really have to work your fingers in there. So it's like when you apply them to your fingers, you can see it. On the eyes, though, it just ain't it, sis. It's such a shame because, like I said, the packaging is so nice. Like, this feels like luxury. It's so nice. But as far as, like, everything else, this is a palette that I will probably declutter when I do my, like, eyeshadow palette collection and declutter, just because I will never reach for this because it doesn't even have, like, one shade that makes me, like, lose my shit. You know what I mean? I feel like if there's a palette that I'm like, okay, I don't love it, but there's some things that I like about it, I'll still hang on to it. But this one, I'm like, there's literally nothing in here for me that I want. And this, the lightest shade, is Tragic. It's such a damn shame. And, like, normally I'm not the biggest fan of, like, excess packaging, but I love this little, it's almost like, you see the logo? I use this to, like, hold the palette. I love this packaging. It's just, I wish that the formula was better. So I know some people were expecting a different palette to be last, but as I was going through everything, I'm like, okay, realistically, this was the worst palette that I tried this year. Now, 54. 54 is, I'm sure, the one that everybody was expecting to be last. And the reason that I didn't rank this last was because I still feel like you can get good looks out of this. It's just going to take me an eternity to get there. That's the biggest drawback with this. I'm like, listen, I love the color story. They swatch incredible, but that is not enough for me with this palette. I feel like ever since Colored Rain changed up their formula, because even though this is a pressed pigment palette, that doesn't mean anything to me. I feel like did they go vegan? Something changed. They changed their formula for some reason, and ever since that they changed it, it's not the same. And that's where I'm just like, okay, I can, like, I'll still probably keep this because there are, like, the metallics in this I do really like, but I do feel like they accentuate texture a little bit. I don't know. We'll see how my declutter ends up going, because for this one, I'm like, I want to love it so much more, and every time that I use it, I'm like, come on, baby, come through, give me a really good look, and, like, justify this for me, and it always falls flat for me. So this one, I'm just like, yeah, definitely not so Juicy Boost, Kendall. Definitely not. So those are my bottom 2. The next palette I have, 53, is Artist Couture Caliente. I am a big fan of Artist Couture. I actually have one other Artist Couture palette, which is a newer palette that I'll be featuring later. I probably should have taken these all out of the boxes before. First of all, packaging on this is 10 out of 10 as well. I love the sleek packaging that Artist Couture does, but this for me ranks so low because there's only, for me, 2 shadows in here that really justify the palette, so I just naturally never really reach for this. The 2 shadows that I really like are these 2 right here, because this formula reminds me of what I love in the Artist Couture Supreme Nudes. Supreme Nudes is one of the best palettes in my collection. If you guys watch my neutral palette rankings, you'll see where it ranked there. But this one, I'm like, this was such a letdown going from Supreme Nudes to this. And I'm like, oh, look at the packaging. Look at everything. Everything was so aesthetic about it, except this formula for me, it was just a lot more dense. It was really difficult to work with. Like, it just didn't give me what I was looking for. And you know what? There's some palettes that I'm going to talk about that you guys probably love or hate, and that's okay. It's only fucking makeup. It ain't that deep, guys. There's going to be differences in opinions when it comes to products, and that's the beauty of reviews, because everybody's entitled to their own opinions. So the next palette that I have is from Nabla. This is the Ruby Lights, the Glitter Eyeshadow Palette. This ranks so low because I was super stoked. Like, I love the packaging and everything on these Nabla, like these glitter palettes. I love the fact that they put their glitters in their own palettes, and it's like, hey, if you like glitters, this is a product for you. So for this, I ranked lower because I do have the other, like the Miami collection. I can't remember. It's later. But this is such a chunky formula in comparison to the first palette that they had done. Or at least like the first palette that looks like this. I love the shades in this, but I never reach for it because I'm like, ooh, like my eyes are really sensitive and I love glitters, but when they're chunky like these are, that's where it's one thing that I'm like, I gotta be careful, because if it gets in my eyes, it's gonna really irritate my eyes. And I know not everybody's the biggest fan of pressed glitters either. I actually am. I love pressed glitters, but it has to be a very specific, like, finely milled type of formula. So if it does get in my eye, it's not gonna drive me absolutely crazy. So for this one, I was much more impressed with the other palette that they had done, which I'll talk about later. My next palette is the Taupes by Juvia's Place. Juvia's Place we'll talk about quite a bit today because I have quite a few palettes, but this one was my least favorite just because this color story lacks so much depth. Like, I don't know, like when you look at this, you're like, oh, okay, it has depth to it, but when you apply it to the eyes, you're like, wait, where did it go? So it's one of those palettes I'm like, okay, these metallics, I think Juvia's Place really nails it with metallics. I think all their formulas are great. They're just not my all-time favorite. This is a great brand if you want a heavily pigmented shadow for a more affordable price. I think Juvia's Place does nail it. Their packaging is always like, you know, like the cardboard packaging. It's a good bang for your buck. I think that's automatically what I automatically assume. How many times can I say automatically? That's just something I automatically assume when it comes to Juvia's Place, like bang for your buck. You know what I mean? So this one for me, I think it has a place for some people, but for what I look for and the looks that I typically do, this just really falls flat for me. So that's where I'm like, no, we can't do it with that Juvia's Place, not today. Next palette, number 50. Number 50, I put the Beetlejuice Recently Deceased. Some people may just write me off completely for saying that right there, because this palette, I'm like, I think I can get like the same type of looks from Lunar Beauty, and I think this collection was so well thought out. Like, the packaging is so fucking cute. But Melt's formulas just, I want to love Melt so much, but they don't want to love me back. I don't know what it is. Like, I've only used this once, so I'm kind of assuming. But when I did use this, I just felt like I had to go in so many times to get a very, like, less than impressive type of look. I don't know. I just automatically was like, listen, I could definitely get the same type of color story in Moonspell. And I can get more out of Moonspell. This one just really fell flat to me, which is so sad because I feel like they did this collection so well as far as like the detail that went into it and everything like that. If you want a really like an outstanding video on this collection, I think Better Off Red had probably the best video that I had seen covering this, like as far as just all the details that went in this. I thought it was incredible, but yeah, this palette, I'm like, it's one of those palettes, I don't love it, but I want it for collection purposes. You know what I mean? So this one, I'm like, I'm not loving it, but I'm still not going to get rid of it because I see people are like, take it back. I thought about it, but I'm like, no, it's still like, it's one of those palettes. Like, think of how people look at Muerte now. Muerte is so sought after to this day. And granted, I think the quality of that palette was so much better, but I'm like, I just want to own it because I think the whole collection was just really beautiful. The next palette in number 49 is the Juvia's Place, the Nubian Glow palette. This is another one I'm just like, I just think this is very lackluster for what I typically look for. Like, if you like a more like yellowy orange type of vibe, this would be a palette that I would recommend. I don't really love Juvia's Place's pressed glitter formula though. It's almost like, it's a very specific texture. Like, it's almost like heavy, like, I don't know, it's just like the base of their glitters I don't like. It almost feels like glue. that's not completely dry. It's bizarre. I think it does make it ideal for like keeping it on your eyes, but it just doesn't, like there's other glitters that I have just that look so much more like pretty and sparkly and flattering. Whereas with their glitters, I'm just like, I don't know, there's just something about their glitters that I don't love, but this palette overall for me ranks a lot lower because I don't love the color story as a whole. Like with this palette, I'm like, okay, I can get like a look or two out of it, but I know that I would have to reach for other palettes. I got this because I gave so much into the Juvia's Place hype. I'm like, I look at my collection and I'm like, why the fuck did I buy that? I knew that I wouldn't use that. Bad influences, guys. Okay, the next palette is from Midas Cosmetics. This is number 48. I think this palette is good. It's just not my favorite. This is the Midas Cosmetics and Smoky Glow palette. One of these were sent to me, and then I actually ended up buying the whole PR kit. So take that with what you will. I just feel like the mattes in this palette were fine. This color story, it almost makes me have to like hold off for a minute and really think about what I'm going to do with this palette. That's one thing. I don't love having palettes like that. I like to just look at a palette and be like, okay, this is what I envision. Whereas this one, it usually takes me a little bit to be like, okay, what do I want to use? And then I feel like I just have to like over manipulate it. And I feel like they're metallics. They look so pretty when you swatch them. But when I put them on my eyes, they kind of fall flat, which is unfortunate because I was so excited about this collab. I thought it was so cute. The packaging is really cute. It's like everything about this is cute. There's just other palettes that I'm telling you, I found so many good palettes this year. So that's where it was really hard to do this ranking because I'm like, where am I going to rank everything? Like, where am I going to put all these damn palettes? Because it's like there's truly so many good palettes. So this is like one, I'm like, this is still a good palette. It's just not my favorite. You know what I mean? So I'll probably say that a lot throughout this day. I hope you guys brought a snack, okay? Because we're going to be here for a minute. We're at 47. We still got a lot to go. So the next one is the Nabla Miami Lights palette. So this one ranks on the lower side just because it has its purpose for me, but I don't reach for it often. But I will say, I guess looking at it, it is kind of similar vibe. Like, I don't know why in my mind I thought that these were more like finely milled, but even these ones have chunkier like textures in there too. But I don't notice them as much as this other palette. So you guys saw me talk about this one earlier. Like, I love this whole aesthetic. I love the fact that they do these. It's just, it serves its purpose in my collection, but I don't reach for it that often. So that's where I'm like, okay, if I'm going to rank this anywhere, it's obviously going to be lower because I just don't reach for them that much. But if you're looking for an amazing pressed glitter, I think the Tati Beauty palette has the best glitters. That's where I justify that purchase. Just by those glitters. But these ones, I think they're nice. Oh, I'm so bummed at that because I'm like, oh, I didn't realize they were that chunky. But I don't reach for them that often anyway, so it's like, oh well. We're going to keep carrying on. The next palette is from e.l.f. Cosmetics, number 46. This is the e.l.f. J Kissa palette. I was really impressed with this when I first found it. Ooh, wrong way. This is what you guys want to see. It came with like stickers and stuff that you could decorate your palette and all that sort of stuff. I thought that was really cute. But this, I thought the quality of this was incredible. Like, I don't know. I feel like I was one of the only people that thought this was a great palette. But I honestly have not reached for this since like a month after I got it, I think. So it's one of those things I'm like, I think there could have been more variation within some of the shades. Like, I think with the red, orange, and yellow, which how much variation can you really have within a rainbow palette? You know what I mean? But I noticed, like, as I kept using the metallics, they were a little bit more tough to get the pigmentation to come up. I have that issue with some brands, too. It's like, some brands' formulas, they're almost, like, too soft, and then it's like, as you keep working your fingers into it, it just loses its pigmentation. Am I making sense? So this one, I'm like, I still really like it, though. I still think it's a really good palette. It's a great price. It was like 20 bucks. I think I got it for like 12 or something like that because there was a discount code that I found. I'm still very happy to have this. I was so excited for J Kissa. I really enjoy her channel as well. I feel like I haven't watched her videos in a really long time, but I love her whole, like, she's very, like, minimal face makeup, but it's just the brightest, most colorful, beautiful eye looks. She is flawless. Oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. So the next one in number 45, I have the other Melt Cosmetics, the Waiting Room palette. This one for me, I think that this is better than the other one just because I don't have, like, I think if I were to look at my collection, I probably do have this color story. I really do not like Melt's metallic formulas, but these grays and these burgundies I think are fantastic. I think this is also a really great palette to use, like, in conjunction with Melt's other palettes. You know, it's almost like if you really like Melt's formula, this is a great, like, sister palette to have. But this one for me, it all comes back to the aesthetic of it, super cute, the quality of it, like, just everything about this was nice. My palette was, like, making creaking noises, which was very on brand for Beetlejuice, I felt. But this overall, I'm like, okay, the color story is super cute. I had much better luck with this palette versus the other one. And I do think that this has its own, like, unique characteristics to my collection. And then it was just, like, an added bonus that it was a Beetlejuice palette. So I still think that this one, it's good. It's just not my favorite in my collection. So I hope I don't piss too many people off with ranking those so low, but that's the beauty of having my own channel. Okay, the next palette is this is from Indie Beat Cosmetics. This is the Frankincense and Myrrh palette. This I used in, like, a chitty chat get ready with me for a Christmas type of look. This palette, the mattes and the, like, shimmers aren't my favorite, but the glitters are incredible. Like, these glitters, especially, like, these glitters just got me. I think they're so pretty. Like, these are on par with the Tati Beauty, in my opinion. I thought this palette was so cute. It's just the formulas of the mattes and the shimmers weren't my favorite. I love this palette for the glitters, though. If you're a pressed glitter type of person, I do feel like the outer packaging, I wish it was more, like, reflective of Christmas, just because this is, like, Christmas in a palette. When you look at the outer packaging, you're like, it just doesn't really go. You know what I mean? So this one, I'm like, ooh, these glitters, though. These glitters are everything. I love these glitters, so that's where I'm like, it's ranking lower, but the glitters are still fantastic. And then the next palette I have, number 43, is the One Size. This is the Patrick Star Visionary Eyeshadow Palette. This is another one. It's a great palette. It's a basic bitch type of color story. It's just, for me, with this collection, the metallics just don't do it for me. It's almost like they're metallics. I should call them shimmers, but when I look at them in the pan, they look like they would be metallic. So I think that this made sense. I think it's a great, just neutral palette in general. And it was on sale recently for like 21 bucks. That was a steal for this palette because I think it is really great. I love that it has the greens in here. It has the blue. It's almost like a lavenderish purple. But for the most part, you look at this and you're like, okay, it's a neutral palette. But it's still a great palette. And one thing that I do really like, I really like this little added touch right here. How it has basically like the fold over. So you could just, you know, push it right open. This I thought was a great palette. It's just, it doesn't really excite me like some of my other palettes do. So I'm like, okay, it's got to rank somewhere. Let me just throw it in. That's kind of where I'm at with the palettes that we're talking about for the most part right now. And the next palette is the Natasha Denona. This is the Mini Zendo. I was like, I don't know. I wasn't losing my shit over this palette because it's another one for me. Like the formula of Natasha Denona is incredible. That's why this didn't rank lower, but it's not going to rank higher because there comes to a point where you're like, okay, even though the formula's bomb, if the color story doesn't make sense, you can't really go much further than that. You know what I mean? So for this one, I'm like, it just doesn't really excite me. And I think that there is just a lack of depth. Like, I'm glad that I have this because it's more Natasha Denona in my collection, but it's, I don't know, I just look at this, I'm like, I just feel like it's missing something. I feel like this shade should have been something different. Like, I really like these mini palettes, but I hate when she puts these, like, toppers in there because I don't feel like she's known for her toppers. You know what I mean? I feel like there needs to be something just, like, a little bit more special about this one. So that's where I'm like, okay, it's not bad. It's like, I think if you have a lighter complexion, this would be probably a palette that you really like. But for me, I'm just like, there's other ones that I think are way better that she's done. So I'm not mad that I have it. It's just not my all-time favorite. Oh, girl. Mrs. Unnecessary. I sat here for a couple hours yesterday. Like, that's why I didn't post a video. I'm like, I thought I was ready, but boy, was I wrong. Okay. Next palette is from Odin's Eye. This was the first time that I've tried Odin's Eye. This is the Elva 2. I purchased this because Angie really enjoys this brand, and then Heather Austin also does. and then even Karen. Basically, my friends influenced me to buy this, okay? So, this palette here, I don't love it. Like, I did one look. I was actually shared on the Odin's Eye Instagram, and I used the blues. I thought the blues and the greens were wonderful, but these two rows over here, I wasn't sure what was happening. Like, to me, it's got these pressed glitters, which I think are really cute, but they're a little flaky in my opinion. The orange and the peach, they're very lackluster in comparison to like the greens and blues. So it's like, you know what? Half of this palette's really good, but the other half is questionable at best. So for me, this side of the palette, I would definitely recommend, but this side, I'm like, no. So that's all I pretty much have to say. Like, I haven't completely written this brand off. Like, I guess that's kind of one thing that I wanted to mention with this. It's like, I tried this. I'm like, okay, their packaging is super cute. I liked my overall experience. It's just, I want to try more. I want to try more to see if this was just like a fluke thing or whichever the case is. But I do know that there's a lot of other creators that really do love this brand. So that's where I'm like, I'm not losing my shit over it. But I'm not like running out to get another one at this present time. But I was so excited. When I saw that that was launching, I was so excited. Okay, next one is number 40. The KVD Vegan Beauty. This is the holiday palette. The Edge of Reality eyeshadow palette. I bought this to do a video on it and I never did it. And every time I touch it, I'm like, why did I buy this? So this palette is supposed to be 100% recyclable. There was just something about this aesthetic. Like, I saw it in store. I'm like, I feel like I need this. Like, it just, like, when you look at that, you're like, that's not real. It doesn't look like a real palette, right? It just looks like a picture of a palette. It's so interesting, but what really made me get this was, I used to be a big fan of Kat Von D. I used to love her eyeshadow formulas. So I'm like, okay, it's a new brand, like they're rebranding, they're doing a whole thing. Let me see what's poppin'. And I thought that this was a good palette. It's just, to me, it's not what I remember from Kat Von D. So something definitely did change with the formula, which I did expect that. So it's not bad, but it's not amazing either. The looks that I've done with this, I'm like, okay, they're cute. It's not terrible, but it's not making me shit my pants either. I don't love how this palette feels though. Like, it feels very cheap. Like, I get it, it's the whole recyclable and everything, but it feels very, very cheap in my opinion. So this one, I'm like, I'm not like running out to buy more from KVD Vegan Beauty presently, but I'm not writing them off yet. There's not many brands that I have like totally written off. I think there's like 2. But the next palette, number 39, is the NARS Orgasm. This is the original Orgasm palette. So this was actually sent to me from Look Fantastic by mistake. And I'm really glad that I own this, but this would be a palette I'm like, okay, it's super cute, but I would never, ever buy this. Because it's so light, but for the purposes that I use this palette for, I think it's beautiful. Like, this is where we're in. These are really good palettes, but there's just something I would change about them. If this had one deeper shade, it would totally have, like, probably ranked a lot differently. So for these, I love using these 2 shades here as highlighters. So it's like a dual purpose for me. I can use it as a face highlighter, or I could use it as like my inner corner or my brow bone or on my eyes. I do have a lot of purpose for this, but it's like a $50 palette. So I'm like, NARS, let's calm down a little bit. But NARS actually really caught my attention this year, which I wasn't expecting because I got really into luxury makeup this year, and I was like, NARS had never really excited me, but I always heard really good things. Like, I feel like NARS has a lot of staple products for a lot of people. So I was like, okay, I want to try another palette that we're going to talk about later. I wanted to try the Orgasm X. So then they sent this to me by mistake, but they let me keep it. So I'm like, okay, I'm really glad that I own it. But would I go out and buy it? No. No. But it will happily stay in my collection. Number 38, this is the Mini Retro from Natasha Denona. Basically the same thing that I said about the Mini Zendo, I'm going to say about this palette as well. I just feel like I have a little bit more purpose for this one opposed to the Mini Zendo. This one, I at least have the depth. I have like a few different types of looks that I could do. This still has like the eye topper, which is not my favorite. I just think these are great stepping stones into Natasha Denona though. Like, I am at the point, like, I want to own all of Natasha Denonna's palettes because I love her formulas. So that's where I just, like, run out and buy these every single time because these are 25 bucks. So it's like, I'm glad that I have these. I could almost see myself depotting all of these minis and making, like, one big mini Natasha Denonna palette. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition. But this one for me, I'm like, okay, it has more purpose than the mini Zendo. The formula is still incredible. It's just, there's other palettes in my collection that just are far better. The number 37 palette is the Rico Nasty Il Maquillage. This is the more neutral palette that launched within the Rico Nasty collection. So I did a video on this collection, and I was a big fan of this palette because it's neutral, and I love neutrals, but I love the purples. I feel like this formula, though, it reminds me of a more dense version of Natasha Denonna. It has a very, like, creamy to powder type of formula. The packaging I thought was really nice. I haven't really reached for it that much, but I need to reach for it again because especially, like, the purples, like I said, the blue in here is really beautiful. And everything, this is just a really nice, well-rounded palette for me. I think it gives me neutrals, but with a sense of variety. But when I look at this, like, packaging and everything, I'm like, does it really go? Not really, but this wasn't my collab, so that's all I pretty much have to say about it, though. It's like the formula I feel like is nice, but it's not my favorite. And I really did like the color story, but the main thing that I loved about this whole collection was the aesthetic. I love the lime green. I love the skulls. Very much, like, up my alley for my type of vibe, you know what I mean? So this one, I'm like, okay, she's still cute, but just not my favorite, and that's okay. So, number 36. I'm, like, having way too much fun with these post-its. The Urban Decay Stone Vibes. This was sent to me by Urban Decay, and I almost shit myself. I feel like I was one of the first people that actually had a video out on this, and I was like, how am I on the Urban Decay PR list? I'm actually wearing the new Urban Decay foundation today as well. I forgot to include that in my description box. But if you guys are wondering anything that's on my face right now, just leave it in the comments after the video, and I could always update that for you. Let me get this out so you guys could see what the hell it looks like. But I do have my video still up on my channel. This packaging is 20 out of 10. I think that Urban Decay murdered it with this palette. I do wish, though, I wish that they just cut the bullshit and took these, like, these two shades and these two shades. I wish they just cut them out and made everything, like, all of this, like, marble metallic type of formula. I think that would have made the palette even better. These are so, so pretty. It's just I don't really reach for it that often. I feel like this is a great palette if, like, if you wear makeup on, like, a day-to-day basis and you want to make yourself look really put together without having to try too hard. Like, that's where I think these types of metallics really do come through because they look super flattering, like, especially these greens, because they have, like, a slight sparkle to them, but it's not, like, bam in your face, like, hello, sparkles here. It's not like that. It's a very natural, wearable, like, everyday sort of a, you know, sort of a vibe. I think this is so beautiful, though, but it's like, it's one of those palettes I'm like, this could have easily ranked higher, but I just had a lot of great palettes this year. So many great palettes this year. I also want to know, too, guys, let me know what your, like, least favorites and favorites are in the comments after the video. Number 35. Give Me Glow, the Sweet and Sticky. I really enjoy their palettes. They're tricky. Give Me Glow's tricky. Like, the more that I've used, I actually have all of the Give Me Glow. They're right in a row because I feel the same about all of theirs. Now I'm looking at, okay, like, least to best favorite color story, but I feel the same about all their formulas. Their metallics are blinding. Like, they're so intense, but they're very flaky. Like, I feel like Give Me Glow is one of those brands you have to do your eyes first or it's going to get all over your face. Their mattes are very tricky, too. It's like you have to just place them and don't touch them because shit happens. They either get, like, just, like, muddy or they'll start to, like, separate in certain areas. Like, shit just goes on with their mattes. So it's a very different type of formula for me. Number 34, I put the Vivid Rose palette. This is another one. I feel the exact same way. I'm like, the only reason why this is ranking a little bit higher is because I think this is such a pretty color story and it totally goes with my hair. Love that for me. And then in the top of the palettes that I've tried, so this is number 33, the Christmas Morning palette. I think this is one of my favorite color stories I've like ever seen. I don't even know like how to put my finger on it, but I love this. I love just, especially, I think the metallics are what sell Give Me Glow to me, but it's like their pan sizes are huge, but look at how wet and shiny. I love this color story so much. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to put them all in the same spot, but I'll just rank them based on color story. But I just feel like I need to really take my time when I'm using Give Me Glow. I look at my purchase now because I bought these all on Black Friday. I'm like, maybe I should have calmed my tits a little bit and not bought all of them. I should have started with one and kind of figured out, because their formula really isn't my favorite. And I do feel like there's a lot of things that I have to do differently. Like with their metallics, for example, I feel like I have to have like a base down, or I have to wet my brush. And that's not something that I typically love to do, just because I think it'll just get all over my face. So it's all those things to kind of keep in mind for me when I know like I'm reaching for this palette. I'm like, okay, bitch, make sure you don't do your face first, or it's gonna be a hot ass mess. Okay, let's go into number 31. I have the True Beauty by BK Beauty palette. This was sent to me from BK Beauty, and I think this palette is beautiful. It's just not my all-time favorite because it's just lacking certain things for me. So when I look at a palette, I want there to be like a variation between mattes, satins, shimmers, metallics. I like a blinding metallic. In this palette, for me, it doesn't really have any of that. This is a very like basic bitch palette, but it's beautiful. Like the formula of these remind me a lot of like a Charlotte Tilbury sort of a situation. Like I think they're very flattering on textured eyelids. They're very, very soft. Like some of the softest shadows that I've ever touched. But it's just like when I look at this palette, I would reach for this, I think, if I just wanted to like make myself look put together without trying it all and have like really no excitement on my eyes, if that makes sense. Just because it's only like shimmers and mattes at best, I would say. It doesn't have that just extra kick of, ooh, you know, that's where I really look for metallics. You know, I love a shiny metallic, and I rank that lower because I'm like, okay, the formula is wonderful. It's just missing that aspect of it for me personally. And then in number 30, I have the Terra Moon Albario. Guys, I have questions. You have to touch those shades so gently, for real. I have questions about Terra Moon because this was my very first Terra Moon purchase, and I have heard that they're having a sale right now. So I need to know, like, do I need to make another order? I haven't bought anything in like a couple weeks, I don't think. I think the last thing I bought were those Sweet Shop palettes. But these metallics, okay, these have the most interesting texture. Like their metallics feel wet to the touch. It's very bizarre to me. Their eyeshadows though, like the mattes in here, are so intensely pigmented. Like it's nuts how just boop pigment. It's crazy. But I don't know how I feel about their metallic formula though. Like their metallic formula is not making me like super jazzed. It's just something about the wet texture. It really throws me off. It really does. So it's very interesting for me. So let me know if you guys have that palette or anything else from Terra Moon. I feel like I hear nothing but Red Giant about Terra Moon. I feel like everybody's always talking about Red Giant. Okay, number 29. Juvia's Place, the Sweet Pinks by Juvia's. I rank this lower than the other Juvia's just because of the color story. I think everything about like what I always say about Juvia's Place formulas, they're all relatively very similar. They're heavily pigmented. Their metallics are really bright and shiny. It just overall comes down to they're just not my favorite formulas, you know? And the pinks, like this for me, I'm like, I just don't reach for pinks that often. You know, that's where it's like, it's not that this is a bad palette. It's just I don't reach for pinks often. And you'll see it with other palettes. Like, you're going to see. This is why I think rankings are so fun, because it's so it's so interesting how people's mindset go into rankings. So number 28, I have the Star Wars ColourPop. This is the Child palette. I think this palette's great. I don't know what's changed with ColourPop's formula. I've been so much more impressed, except for their metallics. I don't love their metallics, but the mattes in this palette are fantastic. I love, love, love it. And the fact that it's greens is like icing on the cake because I'm a big fan of green eyeshadows because they look so beautiful on my eyes. But I really like this palette because I used my Divina Cosmetics, my like Star Chasers. I used those in conjunction with this, and the look, it looks so pretty. I'm going to toot my own horn and say it looks so pretty. I love these though. Like, I don't get excited for ColourPop that often, but lately I've been noticing myself getting more excited like with some of the collabs that they've done. I just wish that they would stop doing so many palettes that look like other ones that they've already done. Like when I saw this, I'm like, yep, I want it. I don't really care about Star Wars. I'm like, I want the greens. I think the greens are so pretty. So this one, I'm like, it's still a really good palette. And then number 27 is the Juvia's Place, the Nubian Royal. I'm going to say the same thing that I said about the yellow tone one. I don't love the fact that they put a pressed glitter in here. That's the only critique that I have. Everything else in here, I think this is a great, well-rounded palette. It's got the depth, it's got the shimmers, it's got the metallics, it's got glitters, it's got mattes. It has like a taste of everything. So I think this is a really great mini palette, and I love purples. Love them so much. I have one other Juvia's Place ranked higher than this one, and it's just because I feel like that palette really made me excited about Juvia's Place. So this one I'm like, okay, it's still a really great palette, but the other one just holds like a special place in my heart. And I didn't realize that I had four purples back to back to back. Melt Cosmetics She's in Parties. This would have ranked higher if I liked their metallics more and if we had more of a variety within these 4 shades over here. I feel like this just didn't need to be like, especially these 3, I'm like, we just could have done so much more. Like, this just had so much more potential, but the formula in this was so nice. It's just the metallics, man. Melt metallics just do me dirty. They really do. They just don't play nice with my textured eyes. And I'm at the point now, I'm like, why do I keep doing this to myself? Why do I keep buying melt stuff? Because there's always just something that I know I'm not going to like about it. And it's usually their metallics. So this, I thought, was very much like my love language when it comes to an eyeshadow palette. I just wish there was a little bit of tweaking to it, a little bit more variety within the shades, but everything else, I'm like, okay, their metallics weren't that bad. It's just, they're not my favorite. They're just not. I think they're very like flaky and they pick up very, I don't know, they're like almost like chunky, and I don't love that. I want a nice, smooth, shiny metallic. That's what I want. Next one. This was my favorite palette. No, I have one more Juvia's Place palette. This was almost the favorite palette from Juvia's Place. Natty's asking, is She's in Parties flaky? I think all of their metallics are. That's just my preference thing. This, the Mauve by Juvia's Place. This was my favorite, my favorite mini palette because, first of all, this shade here, I like lost my shit over this shade. I feel like I swatched this so many times for you guys, but this is the color story that's just me. This is me in an eyeshadow palette. Are you noticing a trend? I love mauvey tones, like the plums, the mauves, especially because I have green eyes. It really just sets my eyes off. I think this is great. I do notice though, like how much I have to go in there. Like the formula just doesn't stay the same as when it's like a nice fresh palette, which you're going to have that no matter what. But I don't know, it's still a great palette. Great bang for your buck. It's a great one. I really love that one. The next purple palette, number 24, is the Lunar Lavender from Kaleidos. I think these palettes are so nice. So, so nice. This could have ranked higher, but there's only, I feel like, so much that I can do with this palette. But I think for a purple / like nude, because like these look like browns, but they have like the most slight hint of purple. It's so interesting. These are wonderful palettes. And then their shimmers in their palettes are so, so nice. I love, love, love them. I cannot complain about anything with the Kaleidos, especially their packaging. Like when you look at this, you're like, what is that? But this is so, so, so nice. Guys, if you have not tried their palettes, I love them. Highly recommend. See, like we're in, like I could say easily, I love all these palettes. I can't believe, how long have we been here? 49 minutes and I'm at 23. Wow. Okay, the next palette I have is the Wayne Goss Pearl Moonstone palette. Guys, I'm a sucker for some Wayne Goss palettes. I am a sucker. I love these, but I don't love the packaging. Like, it's always really hard for me to get open. The only thing I would change in here is I wish there was more, like, first of all, I wish there wasn't a black. Okay, I have the first palette. I already have a Wayne Goss black. I wish this was like a navy blue or an eggplant. I think eggplant would have been a really nice touch. I do understand why, because if you mix this shade here and the black, you get like a navy blue. So I understand. I just feel like there was something that I would change about it, even though I don't necessarily like know exactly what that is. But this metallic is stunning. I did a video with my friend Mo from Mo Makeup Mo Beauty where we both used this palette and our looks looked beautiful. Okay, I love Wayne's like eyeshadow effect. They just look so beautiful when you put them on your eyes. It gives you like bombshell type of look. Like, you just look like a fucking model. At least that's what I think. When I see these on people's eyes, I'm instantly just like, oh my god, they just look so just smoky and blown out and beautiful and everything. And then I love the fact that I could use this shade here as a face highlighter as well. Guys, I can't get enough of Wayne Goss palettes. I do hope to see like not a black in every single one of his palettes, because these are pricey palettes for getting 6 shadows, but the quality of them I think is incredible. I highly recommend. So I really like both of his palettes, but number 23, unfortunately. Okay, oh shit, I forgot to flop this pile over. I gotta work backwards. Number 22 is Nabla. This is the Nabla Cutie Platinum. This is one of the best silvers in my entire collection. It's intensely silver. I was shocked at how nice these formulas are. The only thing that I would change about it is I kind of think that I would have had like one of these 2 shades here. I kind of wish that this shade was just a little bit lighter. But for a 6-pan palette, I think that this is such a good price, such great quality. Everything about this I love. I can't say a bad thing about this though. I do wish that, like, I don't know. I shouldn't say I wish. I think we could have done without like this more gold tone shade. I might have even rather have seen like another like colorful shade here. It's just not like a perfect palette for me, but it's real fucking nice. Like, I'm still really glad that I have it. But my favorite thing about these are these 2 middle shades right here. Like, these like glittery metallic formulas that Nabla does. At least, I don't know if it's in all their palettes or if it's just this one, but this was such a good one. Loved it. Next one. No, that's 14. I forgot. I gotta work my way from the bottom. I forgot to switch this one. Number 21. Not 14. Number 21 is actually a new palette. But I was really happy with this palette, and I thought that the looks that I did were so pretty. And this is just a brand I really like. And it's Artist Couture. Artist Couture Club Daddy. I know a lot of people don't love the tilted pans. I'm not mad about it though. And this blue, like the blue look that I did with this palette, I thought was wonderful. The formula doesn't give me like the total vibe of Supreme Nudes, but I much prefer this palette over the Caliente. I thought this formula, everything was so much better. The only shade that I didn't like was Fuck It Up Sis. I did have a little bit of difficulty with this one, but overall I'm like, this is so my vibe. I love the shades in here. I love the color story. I loved everything about this except for Fuck It Up Sis. I was really happy with this one, so I'm like, I can't say honestly a bad thing about it. I just wish Artist Couture would stop playing with us so hard and like pricing their PR packages over $100 more for a box. Angel, can we not do that? Okay, next one is, I think this is the other. Oh no, this is Amrezy. I was debating myself. Number 20. Did this palette launch this year? I'm pretty sure that it did, but I could be wrong. But either way, I'm like, fuck it. I'm just going to throw it in here anyways. The Amrezy palette, this I think is probably the best palette that Anastasia Beverly Hills has done. I just had so many other palettes that I loved. And this one just kind of got left in the dust. But I honestly, if I was to recommend any palette from ABH, I would tell you to get this one. Because I think, one, the formula is really easy to use. Oh, one of my shades broke. Guys, We had a catastrophe when I was filming that thumbnail today. I dropped all of my palettes all over the ground, and you're going to see the biggest catastrophe soon. But that one, that's a lost soldier right there. We lost him. Damn it. Anyways, back to this. Great color story. I love the neutrals. I love the berries. I love the burgundies. I love this. I love everything about this. The pressed glitters, the metallics, literally everything about this. Packaging, 10 out of 10. It's so good. This to me is the best palette that Anastasia Beverly Hills, I think that's the best one that they've done, in my humble opinion. So, number 19 is the other palette from Kaleidos. This is the Kissimmee City. I ranked this one higher than Lunar Lavender just because I'm not tooting, I promise. It's my chair just going, wah. I just love a neutral color story, but I think this palette is neutral, but in such different ways. Like, I feel like we've seen so many neutral palettes, but there's something so different about this color story, and I love these, like, I love I call them their special shades, but they're like metallics, but glittery, and then one of these is a dual chrome. I just think that this is a really well-rounded neutral palette, but gives you like that extra spice of something interesting. The formula is wonderful on Kaleidos. I really love this palette. I mean, I love both of these, but I would say Kissimmee City is ranked higher for me personally and what I look for. Number 18. Am I in the right order? I feel like I'm not. I feel like I just skipped a number. Maybe not. Okay, we're going to carry on. Don't lie. Next one is the Robbie DeCristie ColourPop at Forest Sight palette. Same thing with the Child palette. The mattes in here are incredible. Metallics, not so much, but there's only 2 in here, so I'm not pissed about it. If you were to take these two, I kind of wish that this was just an all matte palette. But this is such a good fall palette. Oh my gosh, this I know that I will reach for so much in the fall time. It's so, so good. And the looks that I've done with this, they look beautiful. I really love this. Like, I'm like, oh, is ColourPop killing it right now? I'm into it. I really like what they did with their, I think they've really improved their packaging as well. I really like what they're doing. So they have my attention with certain things. I'm not going to completely write ColourPop off yet. Number 17. We're getting down there, guys. We're getting there. Number 17, I put the Juvia's Place, the Wahala 2. I love this. I think it's wonderful, especially if you want some color in your life, if you want to step outside your comfort zone. But another one that Karen Harris is a bad influence. She's like, guys, did you realize that there's a multi-chrome in this palette? And how Juvia's Place didn't market this, I have no idea. But there is a multi-chrome in this palette. It's wonderful. Like, this is a great, great palette. These glitters, though, like the silver one and then the purple glitter, they're so, like, it's too much. Calm down, Juvia's Place, with those glitters. That was, like, the biggest turnoff for me. Even the shade Goals, like this blue one, I'm not a fan of their pressed glitters. If they did just metallics and mattes and maybe some satins in here, I would have been so much happier. It's still a great palette, though. It's just the glitters, I'm like, it's just not necessary. We didn't need those. No one asked for those. But still a great palette. Great price point. Wonderful, wonderful palette. Number 16, the BH Blueberry Muffin. This is a wonderful palette. If you want blues, if you want neutrals, I did a video comparing this to Glamazon because everybody is convinced that Glamazon and this are the same. And they're not even fucking close. Take my word for it or watch the video. Not even close to the same. Not even in the same ballpark. No. Either way, still a beautiful palette. Great color story. Really wonderful formulas. I see that BH Cosmetics is doing like, what do you want to call it? Like, based on your birth month sort of a vibe. I think that starts in January. I'm very curious to see what they have coming. I feel like BH came out like guns blazing this year. And we're going to follow that up with number 15 with the Sweet Shop Pistachio. This palette, first of all, it's very special to me because of just the times that I've worn this palette are just, you know, special. This like blew me the fuck away though. I was like, oh bitch, for a green, I immediately bought it just because it was green. I'm like, I don't care if it's good, it's green palette, I want to try it. And then I started hearing like a ton of hype around these products. And I'm like, okay, let's try it. And man, oh man, is this palette is bomb. BH really did something with their palettes this year. They highly improved their formulas. They're so much more consistent, I think. This is a brand, they were never on my radar. I'm not gonna lie. BH, I was never checking for. I'm like, I feel like it was always known as the brand of like, if you're a makeup artist, this is a great brand to start out with. That's kind of how I feel. Back in like Carly Bybel days, I feel like she was who always used to say that. And now I'm like, oh, we need to pay attention to BH Cosmetics because they're out here fucking killing it with their eyeshadow palettes. If you guys have tried anything else from BH that you guys really love, let me know that too. Oh, let's see. Oh, the Birthstone palettes from BH is like looks like a weird layout. Oh no, don't ruin it for yourselves, BH. Don't do it. Okay, next one. What number was this? 14. This is the other NARS palette. So this is the Orgasm X. This is a quad I would 100% buy with how impressed. Like, one of my favorite looks I did in 2020 came from this palette. And it was actually the look that I did in my video that I did with Look Fantastic because they're who sent this to me. It is just one of the most perfect quads for what I would look for because it's got the burgundies, it's got the mauvey tones. That's what I like, guys. I love this damn palette, and it's even prettier in real life. Like, the reason I picked this out was because I was at Sephora, and I happened to walk by this palette. I'm like, oh, why have I never paid attention to that? And then I saw it on the Look Fantastic website, so I requested it, and I was very lucky enough to receive it, and I was just blown away with the quality. Like, that Look Fantastic video really did make me start checking for NARS. So I will definitely have to try more NARS because I'm still not super well versed with their products. But if you guys have any feedback for me on your favorite products or anything like that, I really want to try their Sheer Glow foundation because I feel like that's their probably most hyped one, I think. I could be wrong. You guys correct me though. Next one. This is number 13. Heather might come for me on this one. I put the Be Perfect Carnival 3, the Love Tahiti. This was in collaboration with Stacey Marie MUA. Listen very carefully. This palette is fucking bomb, okay? Why this did not rank higher, though, is I don't love the metallics in this palette. I love the mattes. If you want the most pigmented, easy to work with, colorful mattes, this is a brand to consider. This palette is incredible. Oh, Katie Marie is here. This palette is incredible, and the looks that I've gotten with this palette are insane. Like, I can't even believe that I did those looks myself, but the metallics do fall flat for me. They don't give me that super shiny metallic vibe that I look for, so that's where I'm like, okay, I agree. Victoria says the palette is so big. I do agree. The palettes are larger, but I'm overall not mad, though. I think that this is a great palette because I really like how you have your purples, your pinks, you still have your neutrals, your greens, your blues. I feel like you have such a great variety without it being, like, it's big, but it's not over the top, like, impossible to store. You know what I mean? I feel like this is probably the biggest palette. It is, I think, the biggest palette in my collection, but it's not a super pain in the ass. You know, I still think it's a really wonderful palette. Like, I hate saying that it's 13 because of how great I think that this palette is. There's just other palettes that I think that are better. And we're going to get into those. Let's go with number 12. This is, oh, I need to use this more, but this is one of, first of all, like, one palette that I wasn't expecting at all. I had no intentions on buying this until I found out it was Jamie Genevieve's brand. And I'm like, oh, bitch, fuck me up. We're buying this palette because I love me some Jamie Genevieve. This is, I think, one of my favorite neutral palettes I've ever found. Just because I love how neutral it is, but the variety that you have in here, I love it. I love it. I love the formulas. I love the fact that I could use some of these on my face as a highlighter. The metallics are different. Like, they're not my typical, like, shiny metallic, like, super intense. I think they're much more toned down, not subtle. There's, like, a very fine line between, like, shiny metallic and subtle. These fall, I think, in the middle there, but it's the formula of these mattes is insane. I did a dedicated video to Vive when I first, did I even tell you the name? It's the Vive The Essential palette. If I was a working makeup artist, this would be a palette that I would use for bridal. 100%. This would definitely be in my kit. I love it. I think the packaging just looks so bougie. Like, it's not my all-time favorite packaging as far as, like, it's not luxury, but I think this is a very well-rounded launch. Like, as far as you have the quality, you have a good price point. It's not super expensive, but it's not luxury. It's, I would say, in the high-end range. But it looks like, this looks more expensive than it actually is. Like, this I would think would be even more expensive. I hope I'm making sense. This palette I really, really love, and I love Jamie Genevieve. If you guys don't follow her, you should, because she's just funny, beautiful, all the things that you could look for in an influencer. She has every single one of those. She just seems like really good vibes, too. Like, she's one of those people I feel like I would be friends with in real life. Next one. What number am I on? 11. Whew! We're back. Natasha Denona Glam Palette. If you want a cool tone neutral palette, this is the one for you, because it's beautiful. Such a great color story. I do think there are, like, these two shades, we didn't need both of those. You know, even, I don't know, I feel like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like, we could have done maybe with a little more variety, Natasha, but overall, I'm not mad, because this is so good. The formulas, everything about it. This is another one. It just gives you like bombshell vibes. Like, you look like you're fresh off the runway. It just gives the most beautiful, cool toned. Oh, it's so good. So, so nice. This is a great palette. Like, I don't reach for cool tones super often, but when I reach for a cool tone, I mean, there's only like 2 palettes that I own. Ooh, that was probably really annoying. Sorry. There's probably only 2 palettes that I own. I would say this one and Sultry. It's a toss-up between the two. I like the fact that the Sultry palette has that, like, pop of coral. But I feel like this one looks more aesthetically pleasing. Like, I just look at this, I'm like, ooh, it looks bougie. Like, it looks expensive. It looks like it's gonna make you even more beautiful. And I like that. Next palette, number 10. I have the Wayne Goss. This is the Imperial Topaz. I love this palette so much. Like, the fact that this is ranking number 10, it almost, like, hurts my heart, because I fucking love this palette. I love this palette even more. Like, I could easily rank this, like, top 5, because I could use this as an eye and a face palette. But not everybody's going to be able to do that, but that's one thing that I can do. I could use this shade here as a blush, this as a bronzer, this as, like, a highlight topper, and this shade as a highlight on my face. I think Wayne smashed it with this. And his formulas, it's his formulas, they're so nice. There's just something so special. Like, his formulas are just special. And I think one thing that I pay attention to a lot is, because I have hooded eyes and I have texture, for his eyeshadows, they don't accentuate any of that. They look so flattering. And that's one thing that I feel like I have a really hard time with finding. Like, I think that's why I'm so judgy with metallics as well, because I will be like, I'll think something is so pretty, but then I'll put it on and I'm like, ooh, that just don't look the best. Like, it's almost like it could be too much. His, it's like everything is just perfect. Like, he just makes amazing palettes, at least amazing palettes for me. And that's it. Number 9, I have another Natasha Denona. I was debating between, like, I kind of kept switching back and forth between this palette and the Glam. I put the Trio Chrome over the Glam, though, because this is my favorite color story that she has done. I love the mattes in this. Listen, if you went for this palette for the multi-chromes, shop indie, because these are very lackluster in my opinion. But why I think that this ranks so much higher is because the formula of Natasha Denona and this color story. I just think it's so beautiful. I love the whole vibe of this. But since I had already been so just much more well-versed with multi-chromes, and I love that, like, shiny, high intensity. These are very, very subtle. If you're looking for a subtle multi-chrome, you will love this. But if you're going from, like, I feel like how a lot of us are, we're so used to that high intensity from indie brands, and then when we see something like this, we're like, wait, what is that? And I feel like that's very much where I was at with this, but it's the mattes. The mattes and the formula in this are wonderful. And this packaging, smashed it, crushed it, loved it. So this one, I'm like, I had to go with the Color Story. The Color Story won on that, but I think if I were to pick between the two, I don't know. I wish that this palette was not $129. I wish that she did this structure in the glam, like the smaller pans with the smaller price point. That would have made this rank, I think, even higher, but since it's so pricey, I don't know if a lot of people will be able to justify that, but it's a combination between her formula and the Color Story, why that ranks so high for me. And then number 8, this is the best pastel palette I think I've ever used, and that is the Glam Light, the Ice Cream Dream. This is so beautiful. And I'm not, like, the biggest fan of pastels. I don't reach for them that often, but this palette, like, I get excited. Like, springtime, because I associate, like, the makeup that I wear with the time of the year. I will rock the shit out of this in the spring, because just look at it. They're so, so pretty. They're so soft and just, they've got the perfect amount of shine and reflect to them, but they're not too much. You know, it's just perfect. I'm a big fan of Glam Light after this one, except I wish that they would start doing more stuff like this, where it wasn't like the obnoxious, like, shape packaging, like in the shape of hamburgers and pizzas and shit like that. I love the fact that this was rectangular. It had the ice cream on the front. It had this on. I loved everything about this because it's so much more ideal to store. That palette was so good, though. I was not expecting to like that nearly as much as I did. And then number 7, I will cherish this palette for my entire life. This was sent to me by Scott Barnes, and I almost shit my pants. And guys, I'm on Scott Barnes' TikTok today. Let's just take a moment. And I'm using this palette. Like, this palette is just so special to me because I think Scott is extraordinary with how he does his makeup. He's just, to me, so influential. He's heavily influenced my makeup application. And I think that his products, like, at first, I'm, like, not super jazzed about them. But this natural palette, for being a neutral palette, I feel like a part of me is biased because, I'm, like, this palette is so special to me. But just like Nabla, like, these 2 shades down here, they just have the most beautiful, like, spark. Look how dirty my hands are from touching all these palettes. Oh my god. It just has the most beautiful sparkle, but it's sparkle, but in the most perfect ways. If you have more mature eyes or texture on your eyes, they're so insanely beautiful. I cannot stress it enough how extraordinary. Like, okay, don't get me wrong. I say this every single time about his products. His products are spency. Like, if I was not a creator, I say this often, if I was not a creator, I would never pay full price for products. I would not pay full price for his products, but, like, right now, he's having screaming deals on his website. He just had his blush palette for, like, $29. He had this palette, I think, for half off. If you could find his products on sale, run, don't walk, because the quality of them is unreal. It's amazing, truly. So when I first get his stuff, I'm not super jazzed because I'm like, okay, it's so basic. But then I love that type of makeup, though. So I always reach for it. Like, the blush palette, I was like, okay, when I first got it, it had a really heavily fragrant smell to it. And then once it went away, I've reached for that. It's hard for me to not reach for it. It's just, there's something about his products that just really pulls me in. And you're going to see another one of his palettes coming up. But I'm so shocked at how much I've really fallen in love with his products when they don't look like anything particularly special, but there is something so special about them. It's kind of bizarre. But next palette, number 6, Eternal Eclipse from Lunar Beauty. This is another one of my favorite brands because of the formula, the consistency, everything in this palette. I love his metallics. They're a little bit more of a dense formula. I think that they look so much prettier when you put them on your eyes because they give you, they're not like shiny reflective. They're more of like sparkly and just beautiful. So nice. But his matte formula is wonderful. The blues, like this row of blues, I can't get enough. I did a dedicated video to this as well. The packaging, I just think Lunar Beauty is such a consistent brand. If you want to get good product, you can count on Lunar Beauty to deliver that for you. I think Manny does such a great job with his whole entire line. It's just the only downfall is like when you want something and it's sold out, it takes a while to come in stock. So that's, I don't know, like I love the fact that he's not overwhelming with his launches either. He launches really well, like curated collections, and I just love that. But number 5, this is another one. I'm like, I could have ranked this higher, but there's other ones that I just love even more. The Pat McGrath Celestial Divinity. I had one minor casualty when I dropped all of my palettes, but she's hanging on in there, guys. I think this was one of my favorite palettes this year because I've never understood the hype of Pat McGrath shadows because I've never owned them. And I loved the fact that she did like a big variety of her, you know, like what she's known for pretty much. I do wish that there were like her special shades just so I could have experienced at least one to see like what the hype is all about. But I think for the price point, the packaging isn't my favorite, but usually her palettes are over $120, whereas this palette was $78. For the effect that some of these shadows that they give me, like, they just set a look off. They take a look to another level because they're so metallic and just, oh, they're so good. My hands look so disgusting. I love the fact she put, like, little duochromes in here, too. This purple, though, that purple is one of my favorite purples in my collection. It's just a great palette. I think that this was one of the most giftable palettes of 2020 as well. I think, I'm pretty sure I did that video. Like, the best gift-worthy palettes or something like that. If I had a makeup lover in my life, I would have bought this 100%. I thought it was great to see her bring back because 2 of the rows were from a previous palette, like the Star Wars palette, and then the other 2 rows were from another Star Wars palette. And then you still had that exclusive, like, 6 additional shades in the middle that were exclusive to this palette. This is just a palette that I like. I have the mattes in my collection that I already know that I love. You know what I mean? So for me, having only 3 mattes in this palette, it doesn't really bother me that much. It's still a really great palette, though. I found a lot of enjoyment out of Celestial Divinity this year. Wow, that just kind of all ran together. Really great palette. So that was number 5. Number 4, I toyed placing this one even higher, too. Guys, can we guess my top 3? Let's guess. All right, number 4. Oh no, did I have a casualty? No, I didn't. That would have been so devastating. Fire Rose by Charlotte Tilbury. This is the palette that makes me want every single Charlotte Tilbury quad. Even though I know they're not the same. I know that this has a different formula. I know that. But this is the most perfect quad for Britt Clark. Especially that shade on my ring finger that looks super dingy because my fingers are disgusting right now. This quad is perfection. This is my perfect quad. That's it. This would be that palette that I could get rid of my entire collection and this would be all that I need. I'm pretty sure that this is supposed to come back in January, but who knows? If you see this come back, and you like the types of shadows that I like, get it. Because I think it's wonderful. Thank you, Mrs. Unnecessary. I got so many compliments. Like, that's the thing that I like to pay attention to. Like, I love really bright and colorful eyes, but I get the most compliments when I wear neutrals or when I wear stuff like this. Like, I think this was the most, like, complimented makeup look, and it was so basic and so easy, but I got so many compliments when I use this. It's truly breathtaking from the formula. Like, this is worth the price, in my opinion. For a quad, I'm usually like, is it worth $50+? Yes, that is. It's extraordinary. Number 3. Who's got my number 3? Who's got my number 3? Glamazon, baby. I fucking love this palette. There's just something about this palette that is so different for my collection. And then I just used the shade Editorial. I just posted a Reels on my Instagram yesterday. And I look at that look and I'm like, I can't believe that's from the Glamazon palette. Because you look at this and you're like, wait, it looks so neutral and boring. But these pops of color, they just take your look to a whole nother level. I just think this is such a wonderful palette. I did have a little issue with the shade Backstage, but I need to use it again. I think that his formulas are breathtaking. They kind of give me the vibes of, let's see, like, it's almost like a taste of Nabla, a taste of Charlotte Tilbury. It's like, it's so many things like mixed into one. I love it though. Like, every time I sit down to do my makeup, this is one of the first palettes that I reach for. I'm like, do I want to use this today? It's just, there's something so wonderful and satisfying to me about this palette. I fucking love it. Like, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, his stuff looks hella boring. Like, when you look at that color story, you're like, that looks hella boring. But then I put it on and I'm like, wait, I wasn't expecting this. It just, I don't know. I don't know what came over me with Scott Barnes this year, but I was so impressed with his products. Number 2. And we're going to have a little story time for number 2 and number 1, because I'm wearing this palette on my eyes right now, and this was initially ranked number 1. This is the Sydney Grace Mel Thompson palette. Extraordinary palette. Hands down, one of my favorite palettes of all time. I love, like, Web is one of my favorite formulas, colors, the effect that I look for. It's what's on my brow bone right now. Think like MAC Nylon. You guys remember that shade? It's that, pretty much. I think this might be a little bit brighter than Nylon. So, this was initially number 1. And then I was preparing for my thumbnail. And shit happened, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But my favorite thing about this and my number 1 palettes are the formulas. The formulas are incredible, between the ease of the use, the pigmentation, like, everything about these is it's truly breathtaking. So what I have on my eyes now, I have Love Bug, Bugaboo, Spider, little bit of Jewel Bee, and then I actually have a Danessa Myricks, the Danessa Myricks, what is it, Crazy For You Cream Shadow. That's what's on my lids right now. And then I have Web on my inner corner and on my brow bone. So this is the palette, and I'm like, okay, that's my number 1. That's what I'm gonna wear today. And then I dropped my palettes all over the ground. And as if this week couldn't get any fucking worse, as if this year couldn't get any fucking worse, I dropped my Makeup Geek shadows twice as I was preparing for this video today. So here's number 1. And I'm grouping these all together because look at the tragedy of my foiled shadows right now. Let me tell you guys why these rank number 1. I also lost my banana split. This is where, first of all, everybody say a prayer. Rest in peace, Makeup Geek eyeshadows. Some of them are still okay, but so that happened. Karen, I can't with you. These were ranked number 2. And then that happened. And my first thought was, I'm gonna fucking buy them all again. That says everything right there. That's how much I love Makeup Geek shadows. If you watched my neutral palette ranking, the neutral palette was ranked number 1. This to me is the best neutral palette of all time, because there's something so extraordinary. That sounds so dramatic, but whatever, you guys get it. There's something so special about the tones that Makeup Geek uses. And I feel that same way about this partial Danica. Thank you so much for the super chat, Danica. Gem? That hurts mine too. These eyeshadows are prized possessions in my collection because everything, like literally everything compares to Makeup Geek. Every single palette that I try, I'm like, okay, but how does it compare? Is it better than my Makeup Geek? And that to me is what says the best palette. You know what I mean? So it's like, yes, Cat, don't start with me. I should have shown you guys the clip because I had all the palettes and I was going to put them down and they just bursted all over the floor. And it was Makeup Geek that took the blunt of all of it. I'm like, what is it about Makeup Geek shadows that don't want to stay in my collection? This is the fucking second time. But, because the first time it was when I traveled. But guys, they're foils. I'm going to give you guys some swatches of whatever I can get out of these foils. They just have... Oh my god, this is like depressing, even dipping my fingers into them. These are the metallics that I look for, though. They are very much on par with Sydney Grace. And the reason that I say number 1 and 2, they can kind of go like hand in hand because they remind me a lot of one another. Like, I could touch Makeup Geek and then I could touch Sydney Grace and I could easily be like, wait, which one's which? Their formulas are very, very similar to me. But where I rank Makeup Geek higher is the ability to build your own palettes. The ability to go in store and buy the little quads if you can find them at Target. I just feel like Makeup Geek just nails it a little bit more than Sydney Grace, but I could see Sydney Grace totally getting there. So it's like, if I were to pick a pre-made palette, I would totally pick... Oh my god, this is unnecessary. Guys, you do not have to send me super chats, but thank you so much. You guys crack me up. But that's where I'm like, okay, if you were to compare like textures and everything, I think like Sydney Grace might be a tinge more high shine, but very similar, like easily like confused between the two. That's how similar I think the textures and everything are. So, like I said, this was initially number 1 spot, and then I dropped my palettes. And this happened, and I'm devastated about it. But if I recommended any palettes from 2020, it has to be Makeup Geek. Makeup Geek is my shit. And it like pains me to see how like nobody mentions them anymore. I'm like, am I the only bitch out here that's over here talking about Makeup Geek still? You could not watch a video before without hearing about Makeup Geek. And I feel like, you know, it's so easy to get caught up in like the new brands and stuff, but I always come back to them. I always love the looks that I get. And I just think the whole entire matrix system, it just makes so much sense. That's another line that I would like, if I was a freelance artist, I would have that entire makeup, like the matrix system in my kit, because I just think it makes it so user-friendly. Everything to me about it, it makes so much sense, and it really just like dumbs it down, especially if you're a beginner. Whereas like if Sydney Grace restructured their website, if you had the ability to like customize your own palettes and stuff, it's almost like Makeup Geek is just that extra step ahead, which they should be because they've been around for longer. But still, Sydney Grace is still a fantastic brand. Like, I'm so happy that I found so many great, amazing brands. Victoria, thank you so much. Makeup Geek replacement fund. I can't with any of you. You guys do not have to do that, but thank you so much. Now Tracy's coming through. Oh my god. Tracy, thank you so much for the super chat. Oh my god. I cannot. But, Marlena mentioned your name in one of her videos. She loves you. That's crazy to even hear that. But thank you guys so much for the super chat. You do not have to do that. But either way, if I were to sum all these up, Makeup Geek comes at the number 1 spot every single time. I would love to hear, though, what are your guys' favorites? What are some palettes that you guys want to see me use, see me pick up, see me try out? I want to know all those things, but I also really want to know what your guys' favorites were of 2020. And let me know your worst, too, because I always love knowing what the worst ones are, just so I know which ones to avoid. But I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I had so much fun talking about all these eyeshadow palettes with you. I will be doing my best of beauty. I'm going to try to do that tomorrow because I posted on my community page which one you guys wanted to see first. If you wanted best in beauty or worst in beauty. I feel like you guys probably all know, if you've been following my channel, like what the worst products were. Best products, though, I think I'll surprise you with some. So best of beauty is definitely coming. So if you guys did like this or did not like it, thumbs it up or thumbs it down, share it with your friends, and let's just talk about eyeshadow palettes in the comment section. I will see you guys tomorrow, hopefully. I'll keep you guys posted. But thank you guys again for being here. I truly appreciate you guys. And thank you guys all so much again for the super chats. I can't. Other than that, I will see you guys tomorrow. Or the next day. We'll see. Subscribe. Bye!